Stick around here on OTB. Verge Alsbury, Deputy Director of Athletics over at LSU, going to stop by here in 12 minutes. We'll get his thoughts on the state of college football right now, but which seems like it is a couple of meetings away from being non-existent. The weekend for college football was not a good one.
It wasn't even like that. Well, excuse me. I don't know about you. To me, it was like 6 o'clock yesterday. Was that when the first tweets started rolling in? Maybe around 4 or 5. That's when Deli's story, I feel like, started gaining some traction. And then it just felt like, and this is kind of how things work on social media, you get a little momentum. It just felt like a rising tide, and more bad potential news started coming about.
Yeah, I think the tweet that really got it going was Pat Ford. Pat Fordy, who earlier in the weekend talked about, had tweeted out that he had spoken to a couple of anonymous Power 5 commissioners that were expressing their concern for college football and its means to exist in the fall. And then Dellinger put out a story talking about the potential of a heart disease out there that's being affected by COVID-19 that puts a ton of liability on the decision makers in the universities that seemed like it was going to be the last straw, and that the decision was just going to be imminent, like it was just going to happen. And then there was an emergency meeting that came out yesterday with all the Power 5 commissioners that no decision had been made. Dellinger is going to join us at 8:15 this morning to talk about how this news is continuing to flow, as it is a very fluid situation, but it seems like the outcome is not going to be good as far as if you're on the side of wanting college football, which I know predominantly if you're out there listening to this show and you're up at 20 minutes after 7 here in the Central Time Zone, you want college football.
Yeah.
And as we bark into these microphones, we want college football.
Yeah.
Especially when you look around and you see some of the stars like Trevor Lawrence, which, by the way, love him or hate him, I think Trevor Lawrence has done a ton to answer any type of leadership questions that you may have about him, because he has unified this group of the player movement. I think he deserves a lot of credit for stepping out there. I mean, a lot of people in this situation, he's pretty much a guaranteed number 1 pick, going into this season. He doesn't have a lot to gain by putting his voice out there. He's got probably more to lose than he has to gain. I think has shown tremendous leadership in this time of adversity, really and truly better leadership than we've heard from any of these Power 5 commissioners that we've yet to really see or hear at this point. We just keep hearing these anonymous statements that come out about the future of the game. So hopefully we can get some questions, whether it's Alsbury coming up here in 9 minutes, Dellinger coming up here at 8:15, Dr. Jeremy Burnham coming up at 8:30 this morning, just on what the true effects of what's happening around college football right now, because it seems like the decision is being made by suits and ties rather than white coats, right? It seems like the decision.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I fully agree with that, because I mean, who are the suits and ties getting their advice from? Like it is.
I think more suits and ties.
But I mean, the MAC guys and everything, when they were talking about this, like they referenced that it was the medical advice that ultimately pushed them to make the decision. Now, obviously, the medical advice is tied in with liability, right? And to me, that's at the heart of everything.
That's it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the underlying. Yeah, that's the liability, right?
But there is a clear medical risk that the medical community is telling that these administrators. Now the thing is, if there were a union and if these players were paid and more like employees, and then they would be empowered to then make their own decision. You could legally set it up where they could make their own decision, and the school would not be liable. And then maybe the players then could make a fully informed decision based on the medical risks as to whether or not they wanted to expose themselves to that. The fact that they are not paid and there is no union, and so they are like other students, and the schools would be potentially liable, means that then all of that is that all of that medical concern has to be accounted for solely on the school side. And then obviously they're going to err on the side of caution so that it doesn't look like, let's say the nightmare scenario strikes and a player dies, right? Or something along those lines. Well, it's going to be a tough explanation for the school then to say, oh, well, we were making them play football so we could make all this money, even though they weren't getting a piece of it, right? What's fascinating to me, Jordy, about all of this is that I never thought that I would see the day where the tension to create a union would be players wanting to play as opposed to striking, right? I mean, if you look throughout just world history.
Well, to me, I think this highlights just exactly how far off base that these leaders, these so-called leaders and commissioners of these conferences are when you look around college football and you see the employees, the work, the talent out there pleading to play. They know the liabilities. Did you know the liabilities of playing football when you signed your scholarship at LSU?
I feel like they did a pretty good job of educating you. Yeah.
You spelled it out. You knew what you were signing up for. You knew the risks that you were taking. You knew that there was going to be some adversity that you were going to face, but you also knew that there were going to be a lot of good times.
Yeah.
That there were going to be a lot of times to celebrate. And I think more than anything, that's being highlighted by these players right now that are coming out and saying, we want to play. And Trevor Lawrence's statement, I thought, was more of a representation of, look, we understand the risks that we're taking. They have the options to opt out. You should also have the option to opt in. So I don't understand why these guys in suits and ties are coming in and making this decision now. Because to me, the threat of the medical threat has always been there. We've been talking about a virus. This isn't something new. You're not learning that this is a deadly disease here on August 10th. You've known the ramifications of the sickness. But now here,
but the heart thing. I mean, the heart thing is relatively new. That's been one of the wrinkles that has added momentum. I mean, that's factored into this decision. That seems to be the final piece that pushed like the MAC over the edge, right? That's directly what they reference.
Would you take that chance?
What?
Would you take the chance and sign up for it?
That I think I would probably if I was a college age football player.
Well, then get out there and play.
I think that I think that all sounds good, but that just completely ignores the reality of the situation. The schools are liable, and they're not going to because of that.
But the schools are liable aren't they liable if you go out there and you get paralyzed? Aren't they liable if you go out there and?
But what's more likely in terms of like getting paralyzed or traditional football injuries versus something that COVID could create? This is something new.
Well, in the age demographic of college football players, COVID has showed that it has really zero effects on it.
I'm not going to argue the medical facts here because I don't know enough. I can't sit here and pretend to argue medical facts. So I'm not going to engage in that. My entire point is that this is going to be the crux. And what's fascinating about it is that, like I said, the tension that'll be used to form a union will be players wanting to play rather than striking. Think about that for a second. Every other time in history, when you form a union, what do? You don't work. And that's why this becomes so incredible, because this could maybe actually work, because this is going to bring a lot of people over to your side that people weren't, right? Like the people that were never on the unionization side to begin with, they're still fans of college football. So they're going to want college football to happen. And so if making a union takes that, well, they're able to support the union. If you already support a union, well, you are still going to. And I keep mentioning the word liability, right? And it's because I believe that that's at the heart of the issue. And the odd part about that is you have to ask the question, are the players actually safer if they don't play? Because that's the entire crux of the argument to cancel, right? Is that they're being exposed to unnecessary risk through playing football. But then you really have to look at it. Is it truly more risky than being at home with no football? And I think there's a very strong argument to be made that they are not safer being at home. Look at Trevor Lawrence's statement. I mean, he brought up a lot of this, right? He talks about all the incredible protections and restrictions that they have when they're in school, the more regimented and kind of disciplined life they have. They have top-notch medical care if anything does go wrong. In that Hart article, kind of buried in it, is that one of the doctors said, we can still play. It just requires these new cardiac screenings to do as well. A player at home is not going to get those cardiac screenings. At a major college institution, he would stand a chance of getting that level of medical care. So, like, I think there's actually a very strong argument to be made that players are safer playing football than they are at home,
I
which
think
once again,
you can't argue that.
okay, well then once again though that highlights that this is a liability issue. And it comes from the same friction that we talked about on day one, which is like, could you do a situation where normal students are not on campus and you bubble players in there and you have them play? Or where you're not required to come in. And the reason why we said you couldn't is because that was going to create a very clear separation of the student and the athlete and call into question what student-athlete actually is. Now we're arriving at that point, and it's going to be fascinating to see who wins this battle. Will it be this movement from the players, or will it be, like you said, the presidents, the suits and ties, who, like, I don't think it's some, like, nefarious plan, right? Or they, like, hate the kids or anything, but, like, it's just the medical concerns, even though statistically are low for people that age, they are high enough where they're causing too much consternation among decision makers as to, okay, if the nightmare scenario happened, how would it reflect on us? What would happen to us?
I think if you had a virus and you went out for 2-a-days, or back in your day 2-a-days, but now college football practice, you were open to a heart disease at that point. I think it's very convenient right now to come up on August 10th in a pandemic that has been circulated around a virus to now tie your argument or tie a way out of playing the game on a medical condition.
Why would they be looking for a way out, though? I mean, this is
I think that the MAC is on the way out because they're looking to save money. I think that's a money grab. I think that the Ivy League was a money grab. I think that the Patriot League was a money grab. I think they looked around and said, you know what? They're saving money. That's a pretty good idea. We've got the excuse built in that we can, looking out for the player's best interest from a medical concern, let's pull the plug too. And now the Power Five are meeting from an emergency standpoint on Sundays, and you're talking about a decision that come down in the next 48 hours. They pull the plug on college football. Verge Osbury from LSU is deputy director of athletics.
Last thing, if you wanted to say that, okay, if I wanted to like approach it from the kind of mindset you are right now, which I don't know if I fully agree with, it would, in the long term, stopping players from unionizing saves you way more money than does does canceling this season. Like, that would be a hit.
They're not stopping that snowball.
So, exactly, right? Exactly. So that's why I think that kind of falls apart.
That's a loss.
That's going to happen.
That's a loss.
That's inevitable.
Verge Osbury coming up next.